Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and today we're going to talk about UFC Paris. Nassourdine Imavov versus Caio Borralho. And my friends, it's going on this Saturday night live at the Accor Arena in Paris, France. We got two top five middleweights potentially fighting for a chance to compete against the undefeated, undisputed UFC middleweight champion, Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I know Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and RDR probably have something to say about that, but Caio and Nassourdine got first dibs. And if they put on an impressive performance, one of them could find themselves in a UFC title setting early next year. So without further ado, my friends, let's get right down to business. Main event of the evening in the middleweight division. We got a matchup between Nassourdine Imavov, he's 16-4, taking on Caio Borralho, who's 17-1. Currently, they got a Caio Borralho minus 125. The comeback on Nassourdine Imavov is plus 105. So Borralho's 32, Imavov is 29. Imavov is 6'3", Borralho is 6'1", and both men are going to have a 75-inch reach in this spot. Hell of a main event for Paris. I mean, you got the Frenchman, Nassourdine Imavov. The former Russian used to be called the Russian sniper. Now I call him the French sniper. And Borralho, I mean, man, this guy's an absolute stud. Comes out of the Fighting Nerds. We know what kind of tear they've been on. I love this fight because not only are we going to get a #1 contender, no matter what, the winner is positioning themselves to either get that shot against Khamzat Chimaev or wait for the winner of Khamzat Chimaev versus Fluffy and RDR. It just depends which of the two is the most exciting. But to break down the stylistics here, listen, Imavov, he's a sniper. I mean, it's in his nickname. The guy's a sniper, kind of has a bit of that karate bounce to him. You know, you can tell that he's trained with Cyril Gane before. And the thing I got to give him the most credit for is he turned a massive corner after that Sean Strickland fight. I mean, I used to have big concerns about Imavov's cardio late in fights. Well, now late in fights, he's going out there and finishing Jared Cannonier. And you can call it early stoppage all you want, but the fact of the matter is he was definitely hurting Jared Cannonier badly deep into that fight. And he's showing me that he can perform whether it's round 1 or round 5. He fixed what he needed to fix. And now I think he's ready to earn himself a title shot. And with Borralho, man, he also is a bit on the elusive side. He also likes to snipe a bit, but I think he's a lot more on the lower volume side than Nassourdine Imavov. Now, something that Caio Borralho really has going for him, this guy is a Damian Maia black belt. So if Caio Borralho gets on top of you, the fight could be over shortly after. And if the fight isn't over shortly after, that round is going to be over because you're not getting this guy off of you. And in addition to that, his striking style kind of reminds me a little bit of Lyoto Machida. Like I said, it's a little bit on the lower volume side, but when he decides to let his hands go, I mean, you saw in that last fight against Jared Cannonier, do not look at Wikipedia where it says that it was a unanimous decision. That shit was no decision. That was a 5th round knockout. I'm absolutely disgusted at whoever was reffing that fight that they didn't go ahead and stop it. As far as I'm concerned, Imavov stopped Cannonier in the 4th round and Borralho stopped Cannonier in the 5th round. Now, how they match up, some spots that I kind of think Imavov is going to have issues in is Imavov is a drastically different fighter when he's on the front foot as opposed to being on the back foot. Sometimes when we get those bad visuals and optics from Imavov where it looks like he's gassing out, that's when he's backing up or when he's pinned up against the fence. So from Borralho's standpoint, I think that's exactly what you need to do here is pin this guy up against the fence, make him work, try to get him to that fatigue state, and eventually mix in some takedowns. Because, like, for example, we saw in that fight he had against Brendan Allen that when Brendan Allen took the back in round 1, Imavov, he couldn't go anywhere. Now, to Brendan Allen's credit, Brendan Allen is a very good grappler, a black belt as well. Not a Damian Maia black belt like Borralho, but still someone with a lot of submissions on his record. And Imavov was not only able to survive that, but to come back in the 2nd and 3rd rounds and dominate Brendan Allen. Then on the other side with Borralho, some of his earlier fights in the UFC, there's been a couple sketchy looks, like, for example, that Mahmoud Muradov fight. You know, Mahmoud Muradov was actually having his way with Borralho on the feet. And for whatever reason, Mahmoud Muradov, who's known for his boxing for MMA, was in there shooting takedowns on Borralho. Now, he'd get the takedowns, but the issue was that Borralho would start threatening him with his guillotine. And, you know, if you're getting threatened with a guillotine by a Damian Maia black belt, hey, I got to bail out of here. And that's exactly what he did. He bailed, went right to his back. Caio Borralho would get on top and he'd win the rounds as a result. But Borralho, kind of like we talked about with Imavov having a bit of a gassing issue, I think Borralho's had a bit of a gassing issue too. I've seen fights where he's pulled guard, where he's flopped to his back. And even in that fight against Abus Magomedov, when he shot that takedown from halfway across the room and went headfirst into the mat on that sprawl, like, these are not the best looks in the world, but I do got to give him credit because just like Imavov, I felt like that Cannonier fight for Borralho was a massive step in the right direction. The only thing is you're not fighting a 41-year-old here. You're fighting a dude who actually, Imavov is still in his 20s, which is crazy to me because he's been in the UFC longer than Borralho. He's paid more dues. He's had his ups. He's had his downs. This guy has taken his setbacks in the UFC, whereas Borralho hasn't. Now, Borralho is super, super talented. You know, we talked about the Brendan Allen fight for Imavov. Something a lot of people don't know is Borralho had a pure grappling match with Brendan Allen. Now, a couple things I got to bring up about that. Number one, it's pure grappling. There's no punches, kicks, knees, and elbows involved in that. But I also don't think it was at 185 pounds. I think it might have been open weight. So Borralho looked like, damn, 230 in there. He was massive compared to Brendan Allen, and he tooled Brendan Allen. But it was, again, pure grappling, not MMA. So this is truly one of those fights where if these guys ran it 10 times, I can see a different outcome each time. And in cases like that, I'd probably flip a coin, but there's no reason to flip a coin here because it's not minus 110 a piece. There is dog money on one side. And in one of these fights where like I said, you run this matchup 10 times, you run this matchup 100 times, you're gonna see a different outcome each time. So for that reason, I got to go with the guy that has the plus money next to his name, and that's Nassourdine Imavov. Listen, there's paths to victory for both guys here. For Borralho, it's getting Imavov on that back foot, pinning him up against the fence, starting to get some takedowns, and use that Damian Maia black belt. For Imavov, it's keeping this on the outside, looking to snipe, making Borralho take some bad shots, eventually get Borralho to that fatigue state where he starts flopping to his back, then you make him get back up, then you light him up. So there's absolute paths for both guys. Look, I'm not going to bullshit you guys and act confident when I'm not confident. When I am confident, you're going to know. But in this case, I think that this is a dog or pass situation, and there are dog odds in this fight. So for that reason, I'm going to go Nassourdine Imavov to come out here and hand Caio Borralho his first UFC L. Co-main event of the evening in the lightweight division. We got the God of War, Benoit Saint-Denis. He's 14-3, taking on Mauricio Ruffy, who's 12-1. Currently, they got it Mauricio Ruffy minus 180. The comeback on Benoit Saint-Denis is plus 155. Both men are 29. Both men are 5'11". Mauricio Ruffy has a 2-inch reach advantage at 75 inches of reach. So, I mean, hell of a co-main event. You got, as far as I'm concerned, 2 top 15 guys. I know that Ruffy's trying to make his way into the rankings, but as far as I'm concerned, he's a top 15 guy right now. And so is Benoit Saint-Denis. Listen, Benoit Saint-Denis, I think that name God of War perfectly describes him because when he came into the UFC in that debut against Zaleski, I mean, he had to show off immense heart to just make it the 3 rounds with Zaleski. And since that point, he's dropped to 155 pounds. He had a nice win streak, made it to a fight with Dustin Poirier. Obviously, he got knocked out against the legend, but Dustin Poirier was a massive step up in competition for Benoit Saint-Denis at the time, you know? And that subsequent fight against Moicano, some people think that after the ass whooping Saint-Denis took up front, that he may have been on his way to cooking Moicano, but we never got to find out because the guy's eye was completely closed. But what we do know about Benoit Saint-Denis is he's gritty, he's a grinder, he's physical, and when he gets on top of you, it's like, damn, it's quicksand in there. And also, if he can drag this fight to where both guys are tired, that's where he really, really excels, in the swamp, as they like to say. So for Saint-Denis, it's about, you know, extending this fight. You know, in other cases and other matchups, he can get it done early. But here, I don't think his knockout power is going to be a big factor early. Maybe late if they're both tired, but I don't think it's going to be a factor early. Another thing I like about Saint-Denis is when he gets taken down, he's got a nasty butterfly guard that he's used to either sweep opponents or to use it to get back up to his feet. And I'm a very big fan of Benoit Saint-Denis' usage of the butterfly hooks. Now, with Mauricio Ruffy, I'm a big fan of this guy. You know, he kind of reminds me of like a Mortal Kombat character. He will literally try moves that other guys simply won't try. Now, the issue with his style is that it requires a ton of energy because everything he throws is 100% to knock you out. That's why they call him one shot. Every punch, every kick, everything he throws is 100%. So he's got to pace himself and he needs distance to operate. But while he's fresh, he is going to tool Benoit Saint-Denis. He's going to make him look like an amateur in the striking department. The concern is if Ruffy cannot either knock out Benoit Saint-Denis or badly compromise him, if Saint-Denis starts to push Ruffy up against the fence, and like I said earlier, you know, drag it to the swamp, that's where I think Saint-Denis could have some success down the stretch. That being said, I really believe that Benoit Saint-Denis is way too hittable in the early going. I've heard people's breakdowns on Ruffy, and some of the just misconceptions and lack of context that I've heard is quite astounding to me. Like when people talk about Ruffy's fight with this kid Lontop, right? Let's talk about that, right? They're like, he couldn't even finish Lontop. He lost the third round against Lontop. It's like, let's put some context on what actually happened in that fight. Number one, what weight was that fight at? It was at 165 pounds because Lontop missed weight by 10 pounds. So this guy's got 10 pounds of armor to prevent him from getting knocked out. Because some of those shots he ate, to quote Deontay Wilder, to this day, I don't know how they didn't put him out. I was like, dude, like, how do you just eat these shots and keep walking forward? It's like one of those guys that, look, Lontop might not have many skills, but he's tough as all hell. So you got the 10-pound weight advantage. You got this iron chin. You're eating knockout blow after knockout blow. Yeah, obviously, Ruffy slowed down in that third round, but it wasn't to the point where it was like, oh my God, Ruffy's about to get finished. No, Ruffy emptied the clip in the first 2 rounds trying to finish this guy. And, you know, when you're going up against a cheater who missed weight by 10 pounds and also happens to be insanely durable, it was just one of those instances where you're going to beat the shit out of a guy, but not actually finish him. Whereas with Saint-Denis, I don't think that Saint-Denis has an iron jaw. I don't think that Saint-Denis can just take, you know, this kind of ass whooping up front. Don't get me wrong. He took one against Zaleski, which I don't know how that wasn't stopped, but that was also at 170 pounds. This is at 155 pounds. This guy, Saint-Denis, gets staph infections cutting to 155 pounds regularly. He's a massive dude. And Ruffy has experience against physical opponents. On his regional scene, he actually fought that Manuel Souza, who just won on Dana White's Contender Series. Now, Manuel Souza was able to get a third-round knockout against Ruffy, but look how Ruffy has bounced back since then. That was the best learning lesson he could have had. And also, even in that fight against the Russian on Contender Series, that's another one people hold against Ruffy. Like, dude, he was at 170 pounds in that fight. That Russian he was up against was a dude that beat Impa Kasanganay. Like, I know Impa might be a 500 fighter in the UFC, but we're talking about men much larger than Ruffy. Impa's like a 185er. Impa won the 205 belt at PFL. Ruffy's a 155er. Guys, can we please use context? So people are using that fight with the Russian against Ruffy. Like, bro, it was at 170. Ruffy finished the Russian. What are y'all talking about here? So as far as I'm concerned, Ruffy's going to come out here and he's going to light up Benoit Saint-Denis in these first 2 rounds and possibly get a devastating highlight reel knockout. Now, if he doesn't, I do think in that third round that Saint-Denis can have some success, pin him up against the fence, mixing some takedowns, but I don't even think we're going to get to that point. You know why? Because I think Mauricio Ruffy is going to come out here and knock out Benoit Saint-Denis in the first round with 1 shot. Next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Modestas Bukauskas, he's 18-6, taking on Paul Craig, who is 17-9-1. Currently, they got it Modestas Bukauskas minus 350. The comeback on Paul Craig is plus 285. So Craig is 37, Bukauskas is 31. Both men are 6'3", and Modestas Bukauskas is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage at 78 inches of reach. So firstly, big shout out to Modestas Bukauskas because I did not see his career resurgence coming. And I know some of y'all didn't see it coming either. When he had his first UFC stint, a lot of people regarded this guy as a jobber, as a journeyman, as someone that's not going to pan out. And now this guy is not only on a win streak, but he wins this fight against Paul Craig. His next fight could be a top 15 opportunity. So shout out Bukauskas for his career turnaround. With Paul Craig, I mean, what can you say about Paul Craig? To make that unique style work, and the fact that he's still in the UFC right now, hey, nothing but respect and admiration, dude. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Paul Craig that has a finish win over the current UFC light heavyweight champion, Magomed, the former champion, Jamal Hill, former top 5 guy, Nikita Krylov, former top 15 heavyweight, Kennedy Nzechukwu. Like, dude, Paul Craig's come out there and not just beat real guys, but finish them via submission. He is so dangerous when he gets on top of you, or when you get on top of him and you get a little bit lazy, that triangle choke will be there waiting for you. My only kind of issue with Paul Craig is that there hasn't been much evolution in his game whatsoever. I feel like people have kind of figured him out. Now, if this was a few years ago, I think you kind of got to go with Paul Craig in this spot, especially at these big underdog odds, considering the resume. The issue is that Bukauskas has been evolving, whereas Craig is kind of not necessarily stagnating, but I mean, what kind of evolution have y'all seen in Paul Craig's game? Don't get me wrong. I love Paul Craig, and he's super dangerous in his realm. But if Modestas Bukauskas can use those kicks, use that footwork, and keep the standing, he should be able to win and cover that price tag. It's just that, like we've said, better men have been submitted by Paul Craig before, but it's been a hot minute. I mean, when was the last time Paul Craig submitted someone? Now, listen, I was in attendance in Atlanta, Georgia, when he knocked out Rodolfo Bellato with that up kick. And look, I know it was a no contest and whatnot, but I saw what happened with my own eyes. And in the streets, that's a Paul Craig victory. No, but all jokes aside, I just think that Modestas Bukauskas, just mind your P's and Q's. Don't follow this guy to the mat, and you probably win this fight. So although I'm not going to overblow, the current career resurgence of Modestas, I'm going to give him his credit, say that I really respect what he's become, but I am under no illusions or delusions that this guy is going to be a future top 10 guy or anything like that. But that doesn't matter. He's not fighting a top 10 opponent. He's fighting Paul Craig, and I think he's going to come out here and win this fight. Next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Bolaji Oki, he's 10-2, taking on Mason Jones, who's 16-2. Currently, they got it Mason Jones minus 135. The comeback on Bolaji Oki is plus 115. So Mason Jones is 30, Bolaji Oki is 29. Both men are 5'10", and Mason Jones is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage at 74 inches of reach. So this should be an all-out banger. If y'all have ever watched Mason Jones fight, you know that every Mason Jones fight is an all-out banger, whether we're talking about, back in the day against Mike Davis, or even that fight he had against David Onama. I liked the Jeremy Stevens fight. I know some people didn't like it, but I thought it was a good performance. But here's the thing with Mason Jones. He's willing to go to war with everyone. So what does that mean? He's kind of hittable at times, He's a little bit on the slower side, but he's on the stronger side too. And just because he's hittable doesn't mean that you're just going to come out here and knock him out. This guy has ironclad durability, man. And one thing he's really been working on, from his first UFC stint to his current UFC stint, is actually some spinning attacks. And I know, coming from Mason Jones, you might think like, dude, why the hell would a guy like that be spinning? But if you watch some of these spins he had on his regional scene, and now that he started to implement on his most recent UFC fight against Jeremy, you can tell this guy's been drilling with real people, because he's getting full extension on those kicks. And one of these fights, he's going to knock someone out with a spin kick or a spinning fist, whatever the case may be. But also, Mason Jones is very well-rounded. Not only can he brawl, which he's known for, but he can also mix it up and get takedowns. I mean, he took down Jeremy Stevens 7 times. He took down David Onama 7 times. So I assume he's going to come out here, try to brawl with Bolaji Oki, and then eventually mix it up. With Bolaji Oki, I mean, if you look at the guy, let me just say this. He fights how he looks. He's physical. He brawls. He throws big bombs. He's got power. He's also a Belgian kickboxer, man, and he's tightened up some areas such as the ground game. You watch his regional scene, And, you know, when he used to take down a guy like Bolaji, he'd kind of get laid on. He's gotten a lot better at not just getting back up from bottom, but now maybe implementing some takedowns of his own too. So I think that Bolaji is an evolving fighter. Look, here's the thing about it. It's a Mason Jones fight. So no matter what I say, Mason Jones is still going to get hit in the face in this fight because it wouldn't be a Mason Jones fight any other way. So with that said, of course, Bolaji has a chance to possibly knock out Mason Jones, but if he doesn't knock him out, to make him bleed, to close his eye, to land some damage. So Bolaji definitely has a chance in this fight. My issue with Bolaji is sometimes the fight IQ isn't quite there. Like, he'll come out guns blazing early, and it's not that he necessarily runs out of ideas, but I feel like sometimes he kind of red lines, and sometimes he kind of, I don't know about fall off a cliff, because his cardio ain't bad by any means, but it's like he like middles out. Something happens in these fights. Like, you look at the Chris Duncan fight, it's looking like target practice. It's looking like this is about to be the easiest fight Oki's ever had, and he dives headfirst into a guillotine. He actually did it earlier in the fight before he got caught in it, so he knew, like, hey, like, this guy's got a nasty guillotine. Maybe we shouldn't dive head first into it. And then he dives head first into it. You look at his fights with Timmy Kawamba and Michael Aswell, two completely outmatched opponents. No disrespect to either of them, but y'all know that Timmy Kawamba is dropping to 135 pounds, right? Oki is a 155er, and that was like a split decision type fight, man. I don't know. And then the Aswell fight, the early going, Oki is lighting up Aswell. It's like, dude, this is how you treat a short notice opponent. But then the second and third rounds, I'm kind of like, yeah, like, Bolaji, like, what's going on, man? You know, like Bolaji, put your hands up. Bolaji, stop fucking around, you know? So, like, yes, Bolaji has tools to come out here and be effective and land damage on Jones. But, man, I think Jones is too battle-tested, too well-rounded, and most importantly, too durable for Bolaji in this spot. So I think that Jones, most likely, because you never know. When you're a walking punching bag, eventually your chin is going to give out. But until I see that happening and I see the signs that his durability is diminishing, I think that he's going to eat Bolaji best shot and keep pushing forward. And then eventually, after, you know, he gets the brawling out his system, then he's going to mix in some takedowns. And then you're going to see a real big level difference in this fight once Mason Jones gets on top of Oki. But until he gets on top of Oki, you're going to have to sweat out a brawl. And you know how that goes. It's a Mason Jones fight. So I think this is going to be super exciting. But once Mason Jones decides that, hey, I've tasted this guy's power, you know, I don't need to get my other eye closed, let's mix in some takedowns, that's when I think Jones is going to take over this fight. That being said, let's see Jones come out here and try his spinning attacks. I'm very curious if they work in this spot. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Axel Sola, he's 10-0-1, taking on Rhys McKee, who's 14-6-1. Currently, they got it Axel Sola minus 135. The comeback on Rhys McKee is plus 115. So Rhys McKee is 29, Axel Sola is 27. Rhys McKee is 6'2", Axel Sola is 5'11". Rhys McKee has a 78-inch reach. And at this time, we do not know Axel Sola's reach. So, man, I was really happy for Rhys McKee getting that dub in his last fight, his first ever UFC win. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who made his UFC debut against Khamzat Chimaev, the current middleweight champion. He was just having all these fights that he wasn't quite ready for. He went back to the regional scene. I felt like that was much needed. He handled the people he fought accordingly. He won the Cage Warriors belt. Then he came back to the UFC. I know he dropped a couple. Still, even though I don't think that Chitty fight was actually a split decision, you still got to be on a certain level to compete with a guy like Chitty Njokuani. So in Rhys McKee's last fight, he went in there against a guy much less experienced than him, and he tuned up Daniel Frunze, man. He used his range really well, and he fought with a certain desperation about him. He fought with a purpose. He fought like a man possessed. He crushed the grapes, and that night he drank the wine. Now on the other side with Axel Sola, I got to say, Axel Sola is one of the most talented French prospects I've seen in a long time. This guy kind of has a karate bounce about his style. He's sharp with his hands. He can mix in takedowns. He's won belts outside the UFC. He's undefeated. I'm pretty excited about this guy, but there's one thing I'm super curious about, and that's this fight being at 170 pounds. Look, I know early in this guy's career, he fought at 170 pounds, even at middleweight in his amateur career, but like, you know, we don't talk about practice, and you know, this is the UFC we're talking about. So this guy's last few fights since like 2023 have all been at 155 pounds. Just to put in perspective for y'all, this guy made 155 pounds in June of this year. That's only a few months ago. So yeah, I'm kind of concerned about him fighting at 170 pounds, but I got to say, Axel Sola is super talented. Like I said, he's well-rounded and he's a winner. Most importantly, he's a super talented guy. I'm just kind of like, man, why are you fighting at 170? So on one hand, he does have kind of a beatable opponent here in Rhys McKee. You know, the thing about Rhys McKee, I do respect his toughness and I respect his experience, but man, Rhys McKee has that tall man's defense and he is there to be hit. Even in that Frunze fight, that's the best McKee has looked, but there were some exchanges where you can just see a better opponent is going to really capitalize and score big in those instances. So this is a tough one because you got the more talented guy in Axel Sola taking on the bigger and more experienced guy who's actually a welterweight. So what should we do here? By default, I think it's probably a dog or pass situation unless y'all are convinced that Axel Sola is that special that like even at 170, he can make it work. Because I do think he's going to win UFC fights at 55s. I'm just kind of like, bro, like, why don't we fight at our normal weight class? And then I looked it up. This is McKee's first opponent on this card. It's not like, you know, Axel Sola is taking this on like a week short notice, so he has to fight at 70s. No, this full camp, as far as I know, someone let me know in the comments, has been at 70s. So I'm just very, very confused by that. Did he say in an interview like, hey, my days at 155 are done? I mean, I don't see why they would be. I mean, he was winning belts and defending them at 155 outside the UFC as recently as June of this year. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. So anyways, we got to pick heads or tails. So McKee will be heads and Sola will be tails. And we're going with tails. So we're going to go with the Frenchman making his UFC debut up a weight class, Axel Sola. But look, I realistically think, you know, screw what the coin says. I realistically think this fight could go either way. So yeah, so proceed with caution and best of luck to y'all that are convicted. Next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Patricio Pitbull, he's 37-8, taking on Losene Keita, who's 16-1. Currently, they got it Keita minus 220. The comeback on Patricio Pitbull is plus 180. So Pitbull is 38. Keita is 27. Keita is 3 inches taller at 5'9". We're not aware what his reach is at the moment, but Pitbull's reach is 67 inches. And I'm obviously assuming that Keita has a pretty decent reach advantage in this spot. So Keita's making his UFC debut, and man, he's been doing his thing overseas. He's a champion in multiple divisions in other organizations. I've seen him fight as high as 170 before, seen him fight at 55s, at 45s like he's doing here. And Keita brings a lot to the table. This is a guy that when he finds his range and he finds his distance, bodies do hit the floor. This guy's got nasty hooks, whether it's his right hook, his left hook, his uppercut. When he lets his hands go, I mean, there's a reason that this guy is 10-0 to the knockout. Don't look at what the record says. It says he's lost by knockout once. No, he hasn't. He had a foot injury in his only loss. Like, don't look me in the eye with a straight face and tell me this guy's been knocked out before, because he hasn't. So he's 10-0 to the knockout. He's 6-0 to the decision. So he's coming in here with serious credentials, and I respect him a lot. Now, on the other side with Patricio Pitbull, I mean, this is, for the longest time, this has been one of the best featherweights and lightweights outside the UFC. You know, at lightweight, you guys know he knocked out Michael Chandler, right? And also all the belts he's won and Bellator at featherweight, at lightweight, you know, in other organizations too. He's been doing his thing forever. What Patricio Pitbull brings to the table is a very low volume, counter heavy approach. This guy likes to lull you into a false sense of security, make guys frustrated. And when guys are like, fuck, is he going to throw or not? Then they start to kind of rush him. And man, he can be a sniper with those counters. Ask Dan Ige about it, because, you know, Dan Ige, man, he had Ige so frustrated in that fight. Anytime Ige tried to make a move, he'd get stung. You get peppered, and it was like, damn, like I can't close the distance on this guy. Like Ige has zero understanding of the timing of Pitbull. Now with Keita, it's interesting because Keita might walk Pitbull down without a care in the world, and he might not show him too much respect. I'm actually very curious about how much respect Keita shows Pitbull in the spot. My recommendation, as you know, not being Keita's coach, my recommendation as an outsider is that Keita comes out here ultra aggressive. Why? Because if Keita comes out here and is kind of measured and, you know, tit for tat, you go, then I go, then you fall right into Pitbull's game. If you have a low output striking match with Pitbull, I'm not saying that Keita can't win in that circumstance. I'm just saying that's exactly what Patricio Pitbull wants. This guy's 38 years old. He doesn't want to fight at a high pace. So I think Keita needs to make it a high-paced fight and give Pitbull all kinds of threats about the potential heat-seeking missiles that are headed towards his chin. So the thing about it, too, is that this is a UFC debut. And yes, Keita does have the requisite experience to not just come out here and win, but to come out here and face someone of the caliber of Patricio Pitbull. Because you don't just fight Patricio Pitbull in your UFC debut unless you're a serious talent, and Keita is a serious talent. But how many times have we seen UFC debuts be kind of shitty? And I'm not just referring to some of these Bellator guys, whether it is the aforementioned Patricio Pitbull or even an Aaron Pico. I mean, guys, think about this. Magomed Ankalaev, Merab Dvalishvili, and Max Holloway all lost their UFC debut. So I'm just saying, like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Keita comes out here and doesn't fight how you saw him perform on tape, kind of has a bit of a letdown performance, and then his next fight, he's going to look like a future world champion. That is 100% a possibility. So you need to be aware of that if you're laying juice on Keita in the spot. But there's also a possibility that Keita comes out here and starches the 38-year-old man that he's fighting, who's been hurt in the majority of his recent fights. What I'm concerned about, y'all know damn well what I'm concerned about, more than a UFC debut stunt or anything like that. What I'm concerned about is Keita falling into the low volume trap of Patricio Pitbull, where, you know, we're just waiting to draw out counters all day and, you know, nothing's happening. And that's how Patricio is able to kind of outpoint guys. You think nothing's happening, then you get frustrated, then he snipes. But I think Keita should come out here, put that aggression, that pace, that physicality, that power, and just the fact that you're how much younger than him. You know what I'm saying? Like, if Keita fights how he looks, like when you look at the guy, you expect the guy to be a bomber. And if he fights how he fought on his regional tape, then he should knock Pitbull out, if not win a dominant decision. But I've already said my concern like 3 times, and I guess I'll say it a 4th, right? Like, if he has a low output striking match, like almost like a staring contest, I'm very concerned in that spot. And yeah, so, you know, we got to bring up what we're worried about when we're dealing with favorites making their UFC debuts against established fighters like Patricio Pitbull. So yes, there's a concern that, you know, it's too low volume, that he doesn't fight like he looked on tape. But if that's not the case, and you give me the best version of Keita, then he should come out here and make a statement. So I'm not sure what we're going to get. It's a UFC debut. It's kind of weird, but as a pure pick, I'm going to go with Keita to come out here and win his UFC debut. If you're looking to get some action down at UFC Paris and NFL football, then listen up. My friends at Bet105 got an exclusive offer for you. For all point spreads on NFL, they're offering -103 odds and -110 for all player props. And also, we talk about this all the time. We're going to keep talking about it. Split decision insurance. My friends, Rinat Fakhretdinov is fighting this weekend. Do y'all remember his fight against Carlos Leal? Well, let me just tell you this. My friends at Bet105 are offering split decision insurance. So what that means is if your fighter loses a split decision, you're going to get 25% of your money back. Now, if your fighter wins a split decision, you win, no big deal. But with the current state of judging, and now we're in Paris, France, and we have a Rinat Fakhretdinov fight, give me some of that split decision insurance because, hey, 25% of my money back on a split decision loss is better than nothing. So definitely take advantage of that. So my friends, go to bet105.ag, use my promo code HalfTheBattle, deposit $100 and get a $50 free bet at Bet105 using my promo code HalfTheBattle. Now let's get back to the show. Next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between William Gomis, he's 14-3, taking on Robert Ruchala, who's 11-1. Currently, they got it. William Gomis -255. The comeback on Robert Ruchala is plus 205. Gomis is 28. Ruchala is 27. Gomis is 6 feet tall. Ruchala is 5'10". And Gomis is going to have a half-inch reach advantage at 73 inches of reach. So Gomis, the French weasel, he's finally back. He won all those split decisions. Then he finally lost a split decision. Now he's looking to get back in the win column, and he's welcoming Robert Ruchala to the UFC. And Ruchala comes into the UFC with a lot of experience. He's won belts outside the UFC. He's fought good competition, and he's a well-rounded guy. Outside the UFC, he was getting some finishes, but I feel like the way it's going to translate in the UFC is he's going to be a bit on the slower side, a bit more hittable. But let me give him credit for something. Ruchala has some devastating ground and pound. Now, William Gomis, I would describe him as a point fighter, a weasel. He's very good at winning these close margin type fights. And he's long, he's athletic, he can keep you on the outside and just point you up. And he's pretty damn well-rounded too. So that last fight he had against Hyder Emil had to make it an insanely high-paced brawl in your face in a phone booth to get the win over Gomis. And even that fight was close. Now, I thought Hyder Emil definitely won the fight. I know some people are trying to act like Gomis got robbed. Gomis did not get robbed. Gomis only won the first round. Next 2 rounds, you definitely give to Hyder Emil. So Ruchala is slow like Hyder Emil, and he does walk forward, but I'm not convinced he's going to have the same kind of output in this spot as Gomis. It's just, look, I favor Gomis with that UFC experience, with the length, the speed, the athleticism, and just having been in the UFC many times. He knows what this walk is like. He knows what the lights are like. He knows what them judges are like, but it's the price that's keeping me away. Minus 255 is a little too rich for my liking. I think if you got in on the early, on a minus 185, minus 200 maybe, okay, I understand. But here, now it's kind of a dogger pass situation at these odds. But all that being said, I'm going to go with Gomi, man. Like, I like Ruchala, but, for example, when he's walking Gomi down, I think he's going to kind of follow Gomi in a straight line as opposed to, really cutting off that cage and kind of cornering him into a wall like Hyder Emil did. I think Ruchala is going to be following him, and he's going to be getting pointed as he does that. But listen, if Ruchala can get on top of Gomis, it'll be interesting. Like I said, this guy, he gets violent with his ground and pound. It's really fun to watch. So if he can get it there, it should be interesting. And the guy's definitely durable. I don't think Gomis is going to finish him by any means. But I think Gomis is going to do what Gomis does and win a close decision. So, yeah, give me the Frenchman in France. Next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Oumar C, he's 11-1, taking on Brendson Ribeiro, who's 17-8. Currently, they got it Oumar C minus 500. The comeback on Brendson Ribeiro is plus 385. So both men are 29. Oumar C is listed as 6'4", but I actually think he's more like 6'6". Brendson Ribeiro 6'3", and Oumar C is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage at 83 inches of reach. Now, usually when a guy has an 83-inch reach, they don't only have a 2-inch reach advantage. So that's crazy that both these guys have reaches above 80 inches. And listen, I was at Oumar C's last fight in Atlanta, Georgia against Alonzo Menafield. And when I say that he stunk up the room, I mean, it was absolutely disgusting. Like, we were all looking forward to that fight so much. And, I'm at the suite in Atlanta, Georgia. I bring my dad because, Father's Day was right around the corner. His birthday was right around the corner. I brought him, like, hey, Dad, this is the sport I love. I had a girl there with me. I had my best friend there with me. I had Hey Jive Picks and Kyle Marley there with me. And when I tell you that Oumar C, I mean, I want to say that everyone booed him out the arena, but he literally put everyone to sleep with that performance. It was so bad. I mean, this guy, has had a little bit of success standing lately, so now he thinks he's a striker, and I don't know what to say about that performance. Now, I heard some people be like, now we're getting a discount on C because of that last fight. Minus 500 is a discount? Like, look, I get he was minus 900 last time, but he should have never been minus 900 there. Should he be minus 500 here? Listen, the thing with Brendson Ribeiro that's always been a concern to me is actually his chin, and Oumar C, he doesn't know how to strike. He's more of like a grappler. Now, Ribeiro, also his takedown defense ain't the best, but he does have a nasty guillotine. You know, he almost got that Gajasulov guy with his guillotine. That was absolutely disgusting. And now that he's been getting some wins under his belt, you know, he went to Canada and got that win. He also beat DR. So maybe now he's got some confidence in him. So listen, I know everyone's saying that C is the easiest parlay leg they've ever seen. Like I said, I was in attendance for his last fight. I want no smoke with this guy at big odds. And like I said, I'm not that impressed with Brendson Ribeiro, but at these odds, it's got to be a dog or pass situation. Look, sure, as a pure pick, I'll pick C because I haven't seen him get knocked the you-know-what out multiple times like I have Brendson Ribeiro. But listen, Brendson Ribeiro is still a big Brazilian that throws bombs and is dangerous, and he's plus 385. So I'm just saying, yeah, C should be favored. Yeah, C should win, but I don't trust C. I don't think C is that great of a prospect like some of y'all seem to think. So this is a dog or pass situation for me. Probably a pass for me. I don't want anything to do with either of these guys. But because of the performance C just put on, and you know, because I had, you know, friends and family there, I hope Brendson Ribeiro knocks him out. But my pick is probably going to be C to have some kind of ground dominance here, and hopefully for his sake cover that minus 500. But I want zero parts of getting involved. Next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Marcin Tybura, he's 27-9, taking on Ante Delija, who's 25-6. Currently, they got it Marcin Tybura minus 110. The comeback on Delija is also minus 110. So we got a dead pick 'em. Tybura's 39, Delia's 35. Delia's 6'5", Tybura's 6'3", and Delija is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage at 79 inches of reach. So this is a rematch. I'm sure y'all have heard. These two met on the regional scene, and it ended in an unfortunate injury TKO. Marcin Tybura was the winner. Delija hurt his leg badly, but since that point, Tybura's gone on to have a pretty lucrative UFC career, and Delija went on to have a lucrative non-UFC career. You know, he won that milli in PFL. So y'all have seen Tybura. Y'all know exactly what he brings to the table. He's a well-rounded heavyweight, and he's also getting up there in age. He's 39 years old. But, man, he's still on top of his game, and he's a tough out. You have to be on a certain level to beat Marcin Tybura. Like I said, he's super well-rounded. He can take you down. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Also, if you're not quite on his level, he can go out there and knock people out, too. I know y'all remember that head kick knockout he had back in the day, and you'll let his hands go, too. And the only guys to really finish him lately, you know, Tom Aspinall. And then besides Tom Aspinall, Marcin Tybura hasn't been finished since before the pandemic. So Marcin Tybura has been doing his thing. He's a staple of the heavyweight division. With Ante Delija, he's also a tough out. He's a true veteran. He's one of these guys that, yeah, I know it's his UFC debut, but he's probably going to fight like he's been here before, you know? And this guy, he hits hard. He's kind of on the slower side, but when he feels like he's got you hurt, he will swarm on guys. Y'all should check out not only his most recent knockout over Yorgan De Castro, where he literally looked like Sergey Pavlovich with that swarm of punches, but his war with Bruno Capoloza, my God, were they throwing heat at each other. So I think minus 110 a piece is, you know, pretty accurate. So for the second time on the show, we're going to flip the coin. So let's give tails to Delija and heads to Tybura. Let's see who wins this fight. So for a second time, going with tails. So we're going to go with Ante Delija to come out here, win his UFC debut, and get his vengeance over Marcin Tybura, who beat him back on the regional scene. But honestly, guys, I could see this fight playing out in a variety of ways, but props to y'all that have big opinions on this one. Next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Kaue Fernandes, he's 10-2, taking on Hardwick, who's 13-3-1. Currently, they got it Kaue Fernandes minus 170. The comeback on Hardwick is plus 145. Both men are 30. Hardwick is 1 inch taller at 5'10". Kaue Fernandes has a 73-inch reach, and we're currently not sure what Hardwick's reach is. So, Hardwick, he's making his UFC debut. He's the Cage Warriors featherweight champion, and he's the brother of George Hardwick, who fought on Contender Series against Al-Salwadi. So this is not the guy that fought against Al-Salwadi. It was his brother, for those that don't know. Kaue Fernandes, man, he had to make his UFC debut against Mark DeCasey, who had significantly more experience than him at the time. And he lost a split decision, but since that point, he destroyed Muhammad Yahya in a way where it's like, I know y'all are like, who cares? It's just Muhammad Yahya. Hey, listen, it took Steve Wynn a lot longer. I know Mr. Move Fighter was involved, but speaking of Mr. Move Fighter, in Fernandez's last fight against Guram Kutate Ladze, he literally drops Guram in every single round. All 3 rounds, he knocked him down. And I was like, dude, why aren't they stopping that fight? And then I realized why they didn't stop that fight. Move Fighter, Move Fighter. It's like, Jason Herzog, what are you doing, bro? Like, so yeah, the Guram fight should have been stopped, just like that Stephen Wynn and Muhammad Yahya fight should have been stopped a lot sooner than they were. Now, the Guram fight was never stopped, which is crazy to me. It went 15 minutes. But Kaue Fernandes, listen, man, he's kind of bouncy, kind of flowy, good counterattacks. He looks to snipe, big kicks with his calf kicks. He'll go upstairs, straight punches. And when he starts to feel himself, when he feels like, okay, I found my timing, I found my range, now I see where my openings are, then he starts to taunt you. Then he starts to get a little cocky in there. And I actually really like watching Kaue Fernandes fight. And I love what he's evolving into. You saw him get taken down a few times against DeCasey, but then against Guram, boy, was he stuffing those takedowns. That takedown defense looked much improved. And on the other side with Hardwick, listen, Hardwick's got decent hands, man. I mean, he'll go in there, he'll start to, jab the body, then set up some shots upstairs. He can cut angles. My issue with Hardwick, in addition to this being a short notice opportunity for him, is that just like some other guys on the card, I think that Hardwick is in the wrong weight class here. Hardwick, even at featherweight, when I was watching his last fight where he was, I believe, defending his Cage Warriors featherweight belt, I was like, man, this guy's kind of small for 145. I could see this guy be a big 135. Here he's fighting at 55. And Fernandes, it's kind of interesting because when Fernandes came into the UFC, he had to, be tested against a super experienced vet in Mark DeCasey. Now, I know that Fernandes doesn't have as much experience as DeCasey had when Fernandes made his debut, but now the tables have kind of turned. Now it's Fernandes welcoming someone to the UFC. He knows what it's like to be in Hardwick's shoes. I feel like it's going to be a full circle moment for Fernandes. Listen, he was supposed to fight Fares Ziam, which is a huge step up in competition. Ziam's a guy that's on the cusp of the rankings. I think that Fernandes is right where he should be. He's hungry. He's improving. He belongs at 155 pounds. He belongs in the UFC. And I think as long as he can keep Hardwick at the end of his kicking range, he should be fine. Where he might have issues is if Hardwick is able to cut off that cage and get this in kind of a phone booth, then maybe Fernandes will have issues. But I think that Fernandes is quick enough, agile enough, fast twitch enough to use that footwork all night long. It's going to be a lot of circle, a lot of jab, a lot of kick. And ultimately, I think that Fernandes is going to come out here and defeat Hardwick in Paris. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Sam Patterson, he's 13-2-1, taking on Trey Waters, who's 9-1. Currently, they got it Sam Patterson minus 180. The comeback on Trey Waters is plus 155. Trey Waters is 30, Sam Patterson's 29. Trey Waters is 6'5", Sam Patterson is 6'3". And it's Sam Patterson who's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage at 78 inches of reach. So right away, when you see these heights, that makes this super intriguing because, both these guys are used to being the much taller and longer man in all of their fights. So for them to kind of be around the same height, and for Patterson even to fight a guy that's 2 inches taller than him, and Waters, I doubt he's used to fighting too many guys that are 6'3". Already, it's kind of tough to watch, similar matchups because they're usually not fighting guys this tall. But for Sam Patterson, I got to say, moving up to 170 is the best thing this guy has ever done. Because when he was at 155, look, he was a very skilled guy, just like he is now. But I remember when he had his UFC debut against Yanal Ashmouz. So before the fact, I had Nick Kalikas as my guest on that show. And I vividly remember telling Nick Kalikas, I don't think it's going to happen this fight, but this guy is a vicious knockout waiting to happen. And then guess what, guys? It happened that fight, right? But he moved up to 170 pounds and he's exceeded my expectations. Look, we're not going to take much from finishing Kiefer Crosby in the first round, but let's not talk about that. What we got to talk about is he didn't just knock out Danny Barlow in the first round. He knocked out Danny Barlow in the first round as an underdog, and he sent Danny Barlow packing to 185 pounds. Now I'm taking note. Now I'm thinking that Sam Patterson's no joke. Now I'm thinking he's serious. But all that being said, he's still a tall man. He still exits the pocket with that chin in the air, and he's still super hittable. But besides that, he's pretty skilled, man, on the feet and with his chokes especially. Now on the other side with Trey Waters, he's also a skilled guy. I would consider Trey Waters kind of a smooth operator on the feet a bit. You know, he uses his height well. And even though you could say he has a bit of tall man's defense, he's a lot better with it than Sam Patterson. He's a lot smoother the way he exits out the pocket, his footwork, the way he pumps that jab. And also, let me tell you this. We were talking about Sam Patterson's chokes. Waters has some sneaky front chokes too. Look at that Bonfim fight. Now, I know the finished result was actually Bonfim choking out Waters with a Von Flue. But if you watch that, Waters was attacking Bonfim with a nasty power guillotine, which is going to get like the majority of people he threatens that with. Like, it was a serious choke. And that only speaks volumes to what kind of black belt Gabriel Bonfim is. That was more about what Bonfim did right than what Trey Waters did wrong, because that was a serious choke. So props to Bonfim for being able to pass that guard and then use that against him. Because I'll tell you this right now, most guys are not going to use that against Trey Waters. Here it's kind of interesting because, yeah, I think Trey Waters is the smoother guy, but Patterson probably more of a dog. Oh, this is another tough one, guys. This is another tough one. I'm going to lean towards Patterson, but hear me out real quick. I've been picking against Patterson a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't pick against Patterson when he fought, Kiefer Crosby or nothing like that. We ain't picking no Kiefer Crosby to win a UFC fight, but I thought that Danny Barlow was really going to expose that tall man's defense. And the way he did Danny Barlow was super impressive. So now that I'm picking Sam Patterson, the tall man's defense is going to be exposed again, right? Listen, I like Trey Waters too, and I'd like to see him more often. I wonder where he's been, man, but kind of an awkward matchup. And then you also have Waters. Is this Waters' first time ever leaving the country? Let me look that up, man. Has Trey Waters ever taken a flight to somewhere like Paris, France, or has this guy only fought in the States? Because I know that the flight for Sam Patterson is no big deal. As far as I can see, this is Trey Waters' first time ever leaving the States for a fight. So who knows if he knows how to acclimate properly? Like, I'm talking in these terms because this is not some seasoned vet that we're talking about. This is kind of, but he's not the greenest guy either. He's just, kind of someone, cutting their teeth in the game. So I don't know. I think it's a tough one just because of the heights and the stylistic matchup. But I think Sam Patterson has more ways to win. I've been more impressed with him. And I got to say, man, he's really been doing his thing at 170 pounds. So let's see if he can keep it up. I'm going to pick Sam Patterson for the win. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Brad Tavares, he's 21-11, taking on Robert Brishek, who's 17-6. Currently, they got it. Brad Tavares -205. The comeback on Robert Brishek is +175. So Brad Tavares is 37. Robert Brishek is 35. Tavares is 6'1". Robert is 6 feet. And Robert is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage at 75 inches of reach. So shout out Brad Tavares. He's got probably amongst the most wins in UFC middleweight history. He's got to be right up there. And probably also the most unanimous decision wins in UFC middleweight history. Man, Brad Tavares is a solid kickboxer with above average takedown defense. He has some of the best takedown defense in UFC middleweight history. And if you're not quite ready for a guy like Brad Tavares, he's going to go out there and 30-27 you and put on a leg kick clinic, jab you up. We used to call this guy Hawaiian Bisping back in the day. I mean, we're talking about a 15+ year UFC vet in Brad Tavares. So like I said, you have to be on a certain level to not just beat a guy like Brad Tavares, but compete with him. And on the other side with Robert Brishek, listen, I know he had a less than impressive UFC debut. I think we all know that. To his credit, he was coming off a bit of a layoff. It was his UFC debut. But that's about all I can say because, I mean, I really expected more from him considering the level of experience he has outside the UFC. This is not a young buck in Robert Brishek. This is not some 23-year-old kid where the lights were a little bit too bright. This is a 35-year-old man. So I'm really questioning what exactly happened in that debut. I have my theories, Garden of Life, fruits and vegetables, enhanced drug testing, like I have my theories about why he didn't perform his best in his UFC debut. But the question is, can he come out here and perform better here against Brad Tavares? Because listen, Brishek is still a guy with 11 knockouts on his record. And in addition to that, he still had over 20 pro fights. So again, this is not some 5-0 guy trying to get his feet wet or something like that. So yeah, it was a big time head scratcher. So listen, I think there's a chance that he's a live underdog. You had your UFC debut. We know that people oftentimes don't perform at their best. Now you know what that walk is like. And maybe we can see a better version of him because listen, although Tavares does have the insane amount of UFC experience he has, Brad Tavares is beatable. The blueprint has been laid out on how to beat Brad Tavares. And not only that, but Brad Tavares is about 37 years old now. He's kind of on his way out. I've thought Brad Tavares was on his way out for a hot minute. So I think before the fact, this is a dog or pass situation. What's giving me hesitancy, y'all know damn well what it is. Losing a decision to Ihor Potieria. Like, how can I even look myself in the mirror and be like, I'm going to bet the guy that lost to Ihor Potieria. You know what I mean? But MMA math and all that doesn't mean shit. You've seen great fighters lose to not great fighters many, many times. Like, this is the sport. Flukes happen. UFC debut stunts happen. Drug testing happens. Like, we just don't know what the deal was in that debut. So I'm hoping for a better version of Robert Brishek in this spot. And I'm not going to be surprised one bit if he comes out here, looks way better than he did in his debut, and knocks out Brad Tavares. Tavares is beatable. But unfortunately, until I see, the version of Brishek I saw outside the UFC, in the UFC, I'm going to have to go with Brad Tavares by default. I understand why he's favored. Look at that experience. He is proven. Like, you don't just stick around the UFC for 15 plus years if you're some scrub. You know what I'm saying? So before the fact, I think it's going to be a Brad Tavares unanimous decision. But if you tell me that it's going to be a Brishek knockout, if you're convinced that, hey, I want to take that underdog shot, let's fade Brad no matter who it is. Dude, I get it. I bet Brad against the ghost of Chris Weidman. And Brad gave me the biggest sweat I've ever had. And then I've also bet on, like Bruno Silva against Brad Tavares, and he knocked out Brad Tavares in the first round. So guys, and let me tell you this one from back in the day for y'all, not even old school Half the Battle fans, because this is before Half the Battle existed. But back in the day, I bet on Brad Tavares to beat Tim Bosch, and Tim Bosch knocked him out. And then I also bet on my boy, the Iron Turtle, and Iron Turtle won. And it's funny because Brad Tavares is known for that legendary takedown defense. Iron Turtle took him down in that fight, man. So I'm just saying, do not act like Brad Tavares is the lock of the century, because Brad Tavares, like I said, he's on his way out. He's a little bit on the chinny side. He hasn't evolved. He's very, very solid. Like, you have to be on a certain level to beat him, but it's not like Brad Tavares is going to come out here with new wrinkles in his game. He is a finished product. So I think it's a winnable fight for Robert Brishek. It's just tough to pick him when he looked terrible in his debut and he lost to, a dude that went 2-5 in the UFC. Yeah. So hopefully Robert looks better here. I'd love to see the best version of him, but until I see some signs of that, I'm going to go with Brad Tavares to win a unanimous decision. Next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Rinat Fakhretdinov. He's 24-2-1, taking on Andreas Gustafsson, who is 12-2. Currently, they got it a pick 'em with a slight lean on Gustafsson. He's -115, and Rinat is -105. Gustafsson's 34, Rinat's 33. Both men are 6'1", and Rinat Fakhretdinov is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage at 74 inches of reach in this fight. So, man, this is a banger. And actually, if y'all go back to one of my recap shows after Andreas Gustafsson fought Chaos Williams, I called for this fight. I said, I want to see Andreas Gustafsson fight Rinat Fakhretdinov next. Why? Because Gustafsson pushes a ridiculous pace, and Rinat super strong, super physical, but tends to kind of slow down as fights progress. I'm curious what this fight looks like if it hits round 3. And now we're getting it, and I cannot wait. Listen, I got to give Rinat Fakhretdinov a lot of credit because, listen, when you put together a 23-1 record in pro MMA, I mean, hey, all right, let's say he lost the Leal fight. When you put together a 22-2 record in pro MMA, hey, that is pretty damn impressive. And y'all got to stop with these ridiculous misconceptions. People have been like, he's lost his last 3 fights in a row. Brr, brr, brr. It's like he lost against Carlos Leal, but that's it. Please stop saying that the Nicholas Dalby fight was some kind of robbery. No, it wasn't. Like, how could you say that? In round 1, Rinat dropped Dalby. Let's give Dalby round 2. In round 3, Rinat grinded out a tired Dalby, got 2 takedowns and a lot of control. Guys, that was a 29-28 Rinat. Please stop with the BS, okay? Now, the Leal fight, I got no defense for, but to say that he should have lost the Dalby fight like Jonah Hill cut. Now, the Zaleski fight, I think a draw is pretty, accurate there. But, yeah, I only thought he lost the Carlos Leal fight. Okay, it was what it was. But Rinat is a tough out. No matter how you slice it, I don't care what the judges said. Rinat is not an easy out. He's physical. He hits hard. He can wrestle. He's experienced. He brings a lot of positive things to the table. But on the other side with Andreas Gustafsson, man, this is not a guy that I want to get in the way of. He describes his style as going full you-know-what, and boy, does he go full you-know-what when he's in there. I don't think I've seen a weaponized pace like this, at least at welterweight, in a long time. I've seen it at middleweight with Fluffy Hernandez, but damn, the way he treated Chaos Williams, and guys, I know that the Chaos Williams we see today isn't, a prime version of Chaos. Like, hey, he's still a pro. He still makes weight every fight, but I have a little inkling and suspicion that Chaos Williams has kind of checked out the game. He'll show up for his paycheck once or twice a year, but he don't need this shit. And I don't think he's hungry anymore. But Gustafsson treated him like he's not hungry anymore. And if the big dynamic here is how does this fight play out if it hits round 3? Dude, in round 3, the kind of numbers that Andreas Gustafsson was putting on against Chaos Williams, let's take a look at this. So he landed 8 takedowns in the fight, attempted 14, but in round 3, he outstruck Chaos 33-5, and he landed 5 takedowns. So that means that Chaos kept getting up. Guess what? I don't care if you get back up. I'm going to put you right back down. This dude, Gustafsson, his cardio is absolutely insane. Look, I think at distance, I'd probably favor Rinat. I'd probably favor a lot of fighters at distance over Andreas Gustafsson. But the thing about it is Andreas Gustafsson is ultra durable. He literally gives no fucks whatsoever. He's going to walk you down. And I don't think he's going to be worried about getting into the clinch with someone like Rinat, who is no slouch in the clinch at all. But we've seen Rinat wear down in fights against lesser opponents like Carlos Leal. Even, look, I love Zaleski. Zaleski's one of my favorite fighters, but my boy Zaleski's 40 years old. He's on his way out. That 3rd round was a bad look. I think that this first round is going to be close here, but late round 2 and then all of round 3, I think that Gustafsson's really going to take over. And I think he's going to come out here and hand Rinat Fakhretdinov his first official UFC loss. Listen, I know some people view this as a buy low for Rinat, thinking that everyone's overreacting and stuff. I called out the overreaction. I mean, I thought he beat Dalby pretty clearly. So I disagree with people, but I'm not getting in this dude Andreas Gustafsson's way right now. Until I see a reason to get in his way, I'm not getting in his way. And I think that it's going to be close until it's not close, until he starts cooking Fakhretdinov to the bone. And I think he's going to wear him down. And I think by the time round 3 comes through, you're going to be like, oh, shit, this dude Gustafsson is a serious problem. So I'm going Andreas Gustafsson to use that pace, that weaponized cardio, that physicality, and win a decision against Rinat and hand him his first official UFC loss. Last but not least, in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Shauna Bannon. She's 7-1. Taking on Sam Hughes, who's 10-6. Currently, they got it Sam Hughes -320. The comeback on Shauna Bannon is +270. So Sam Hughes is 33, Bannon is 31. Both women are 5'5", and Shauna Bannon is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage at 65 inches of reach. So we're not used to having Sam Hughes at big favorite prices like this, -320. But I got to give her so much credit. she has truly paid her dues. If you're not quite ready to swim in the deep end with Sam Hughes, she's going to drown you. She's going to expose that. And she's one of these fighters that, look, she might not be the most athletic. She might not be the most technically sound in, any department, but she's got insane heart, a will to win, cardio, that drive, and it takes her so far. And on the other side with Bannon, I might actually say that Bannon's a bit more on the technical side, and she's got that Taekwondo background. But hey, I got to give her credit for her toughness too, because in that last fight, she got dropped and she came back and won the fight inside the distance. Now, on one hand, you can say, hey, she showed, the heart of gold there. I mean, she showed the heart of a champion in that fight. But on the other hand, you can be like, she got dropped by Puja Tomar. If you're a fighter with aspirations of staying in the UFC and you got dropped by Puja Tomar, there's a big problem there. So while I don't advocate laying minus 300 something odds on Sam Hughes, because the nature of her fights is usually comeback wins. Like, she'll drop that first round and then her opponent's gas, and then she really just, pushes that pace on them in the second and third rounds and breaks them. And talking about toughness, you remember that first round against Jacqueline Amorim? You can say cheating or what, but listen, other girls would have not only tapped out quick, but gone to sleep. And Sam Hughes, look, when you're in a locked-in rear naked choke, you're not thinking about, am I breaking the rules here by grabbing glove? No, you're not thinking about stuff like that. You're thinking, if I don't do something quick, I'm going to be asleep. So the fact that she had the wherewithal to defend that choke against Amorim, to me, is pretty damn admirable. Now, as far as this fight's concerned, let's give the first round to Bannon, and in typical Sam Hughes fashion, she probably takes over the second and third rounds. I don't know what the exact outcome is going to be here, and I would not lay no minus 320 on Sam Hughes. She's an underdog type fighter, but I do suspect that her UFC experience, her toughness, and her pace and durability should be enough to come out here and win at least 2 of the 3 rounds and go ahead and secure this decision. So for that reason, I'm going to pick Sam Hughes to defeat Shauna Bannon at UFC Paris. Well, my friends, we did it. It's going down this Saturday night live at UFC Paris. My friends, thank you all so much for all your support. I want to personally thank you for making this week's episode of Dana White's Contender Series my most watched Contender Series video ever, and the most watched episode of Half the Battle in 2025. Thank you all so much for making that happen. Listen, once I get to 10K subscribers, I'm going to be giving out some free Malcolm Wellmaker merch. So please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave me a comment, share if you feel so inclined. I'll be back this weekend to break down, next week's episode of Dana White's Contender Series. Let's keep the train rolling. And best of luck this weekend. I hope y'all kill it. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.